Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I just wanted to go through, and I'm kind of wanting to start a new video series or do something along the lines where I can kind of integrate or show some people that are wanting to become DMs, kind of my thought process and how I go about making things. I adhere a lot to Jim Murphy's, minimalist DM, where you're pretty much going through and trying to be able to kind of DM on the spot or be able to be a dungeon master for groups without much effort at that point there. And one of the best ways I think that's going through is making your own world, making your own campaign setting, all of that. So I would definitely highly recommend maybe checking out his videos, because you may hear me mention some things that he has brought up before. Same thing goes for like Matt Colville, Matt Mercer, the folks with Hamburg Booker Helper, Geek and Sundry, Runesmith, and a lot of these different places that are going through and fine edited YouTube videos. So this is what they do. I highly recommend check out their stuff there, because they're going to help out a ton, and that's what helped me out a lot. But what I kind of want to go through is show you, some easy step methods, and to show you that kind of step by step, it's not as intimidating as you may think to make a campaign world, or make it just a one-shot world. Maybe you just want to give it a roll to become a DM, and really, all you need is a pencil and a note card. And hopefully with my video today, I can kind of help you out with getting things going there. So what I highly recommend is when you are getting your players, their job is to go through and they're going to build their characters to interact with your world. And for me, I find it a lot easier to go through, and instead of having to flip through a module book, wow, I'm not knocking them, they're great, they have a lot in there. But in some cases there, it's a lot easier for you to come up with things on the fly, or at least come up with things that would fit into your world whenever you're the one that's created it and crafted it. Whereas when another mind or a group of minds has gone through and created another world, it can be a little bit daunting to try and go through and make sure you have everything to what you feel like is perfection. So give your players an open sandbox to run around then, but also have your own personal touch on it there, and that's where I go for a lot of homebrewing. For those of you that don't know what homebrewing is essentially just where you're going through, you're creating your campaign structure, you create the villains, the towns, the quests, everything for your players to kind of interact with there. And you can choose to have it as a complete railroad where they have to follow you step by step as far as what you plan. In some cases that's good, some cases it's not so much. Or you can be more of a sandbox where your players can decide what they want to do in your world. So for this very first part, what I want to do, and now that we've got that kind of 2.5 minute exposition out of the way, I want to show you what it takes to start building your first village for D&D. I think this is a great place for you to get your players into, and really you only need like 3 things, but you can kind of spruce it up and change it however you want. So this is going to be completely new and live with you guys watching here, or more or less live, and I'm just going to go roll off the cuff with it itself. I'm just using a nice little Papermate pencil. You can use any kind of mechanical pencil. I've got these other ones over here as well too, so nothing too fancy. If you want to spruce it up, you definitely can. I'm not a beautiful artist, because the thing is these note cards or pieces of paper, you can follow with whatever you got handy. Really, you just need something to write on and your pencil. So when you start off with your world for D&D and your village, the first thing you're going to need, there's essentially kind of like 3 things you're going to want to make sure you have, so your players have something to interact with on the bare level. The first thing you want to start with is kind of like a government building or a location for like your town center or structure. It's going to be the place where you have quest givers and also places to earn rewards at there. So when thinking about other different things out there, in some cases there it could be a village crier saying, hey, there's monsters attacking the streets or whatever there. It could be like a newspaper journalism or something along those lines there, where they're going through and they're trying to get people to come in and say, hey, here's what you've got, here's monsters attacking this specific area, this person is willing to pay you if you take care of the local infestation or whatever there. Or maybe it could be people going and posting something on like a kind of like a job board or a notice board. If you ever played The Witcher 3 or any of the rest of that stuff there, you're probably familiar with notice boards and stuff there where they have quests on there, and they tell you who is going to give you the reward once you complete the quest. Same thing goes as far as like Skyrim. You have different places. You got Grand Halls and the rest of that as well too, where Jarl will sit, where it shows that government structure there, and they can reward you from there. So kind of thinking about that itself there, what I want to do is I want to fill my place maybe with a building. So yeah, to start with, let's go with, I'm going to create a government building, and let's just say this will be like a grand hall, like you would find in Skyrim or Oblivion or some other places at that point there. So what you want to do is make your grand hall building, and literally you can make it whatever shape you want to make it there. For me, when I'm thinking of grand hall, just gonna be a building. This is gonna be perfect or anything along those lines, but hey, really, my players probably won't ever see this, but I will. And as long as I know what the stuff is, that's what matters. I'm just going to do a nice little roof here. I'm going to do some etchings. Make it look like a wood thatch woof roof there. Okay. So then, and I'll put like a little bullet point here, and I'll just say this is the grand hall. Okay. Got your grand hall. So then that's the first thing. You got my government building here, and this more or less, I'll put a star here because this will be my quest location. This is where my players can go to either get their first quest or find multiple quests from it there. So the next part here is we want to figure out as far as a inn or a tavern, and this is going to be a place for the players to be able to rest, eat, and drink. And the other nice thing is this is a good place where you can also get more quest information or even find quests for your players as well too. So I really like the aesthetic of a tavern that has rooms that the players can stay in and have it kind of like a poor or modest kind of tavern at that point there. So the rooms aren't like super fancy, so the players can afford it early on. So this being the first village, I want to make sure, hey, things are affordable for them there. So I'm just going to say I'm going to draw myself a little tavern here. Effectively, this would be like where the corner meets at that point there. Do kind of my wood palette. Yeah, and so there you go. I'll give them a little fence or something like that there too. Be like, oh yeah, you guys can enter through here and stuff, and we'll have the doorway right there. Now, if you want to, I used to go through and I would just make it like open and then put in little furniture and the rest of that stuff there. But what I kind of find out is like players don't really care as long as you know like the building and you can describe kind of what's in the building at that point there and use your imagination when you're doing role playing at that point there. That's definitely the way to go. And with this being a tavern, I want to come up with a name. So usually what I like to do is throw an animal in the tavern name. So I'll put a little bullet point here for the tavern name, and then we'll call it... I'll call it the Territorial Raven. How's that sound? All right, Territorial Raven. So that's my tavern, and you can put tavern in like a parentheses there, so that way it's... Gosh, why can I not spell it in? Leaving off letters and all kinds of stuff here. All right, Territorial Raven, tavern. Okay, cool. So now you got an inn and tavern for players to rest, eat, and drink, and it's a nice place where they can spend their hard-earned gold from quests. You got to remember that. You have a reason to reward your players or for them to even be in this world for you here. So there's that. The next thing you want to do is have like a shop or a general store or maybe a merchant for the players to buy goods or maybe even sell some goods they might have got a hold of. I have some players that stockpile items like crazy because they're like, hey, I want to take every fur pelt off of a wolf because when I go into town, I want to be able to sell these things and maybe get some stuff. They want to make a living. So let's make a general store here in town. And we'll put it in front of the Grand Hall. We'll put kind of over here at this point, and nothing too fancy, just kind of like our squarish building. Put a little indicator for a door there. Give it a roof. Oh, what should we name it at that point there? Well, We'll just call it Grand Good. We'll call it Grant Goods. Gosh, I keep forgetting ours. Grant's Goods. The owner will be named Grant. How's that going? Grant will be his first name at that point there. This is our general store at that point. So now this is where I go through. It's like, okay, I've got my 3 main buildings. So here is a place where players can get quests and, you know, get rewarded for it as well too. Kind of learn more about the world and the rest of that stuff there. Tavern's a place where they can go spend their gold, eat, drink, have a place to rest and call like their home base, but also can also get quests and rewards and stuff there too, but also be a place where spend the gold. And same thing with Grant's Goods. Also a place where you can use to give your players quests, but also gives them another place where they can buy and sell their gold. I mean, and heck, with the Grand Hall, I had in one of my campaigns, my players can buy houses, and they did, and that was one thing where they thought it was really awesome and made the part of the city. You can grow your city as much as you want to. The nice thing is when you're homebrewing, you get to throw in your own stuff there. You have an abandoned house or whatever, your players can buy that from the city at that point there. So there's the 3 main buildings to kind of start off with there. So now we're going to go over government building. This is where I'll go here. Grand Hall is ruled by a baron. How's that sound? Okay, Grand Hall is ruled by a baron. Kind of watches over the lands. Territorial Rock, Raven is the tavern. Modest cost. And then Grant's Goods. I'll say owned by Grant. Grant Doven. There we go. Alright, so there is the first kind of starting points of, you know, the 3 main things you're going to need to start your village at that point there. Key features now. These are something that you're going to keep in mind, and just even think about historically. Villages and towns and the rest of that stuff there, they're going to need some of these things to actually survive and thrive. So the first thing is any settlement, especially in the world today and even in the past, they need to have a water source for the town. It's great for transportation, for drinking, for cleaning goods and services, yourself at that point there, trying to keep away plague and the rest of that. So, you know, what we'll do is I will slap a river. Let's just do this little number here. I'm going to draw myself a river. It's a very poor river, but hey, it'll do. Got yourself a river at that point there, and do little etchings here as far as to show some like currents and stuff. There we go. So got my stream, my river at that point there. We'll call this the we'll call it the Red Tail River. All right. So there is our main water source for the town that the town kind of built itself around, was the river. Now, what kind of food would sustain the people in this town? I mean, the thing is it all exported, or are there farmers in town, or that's kind of just this world building questions to help here. So the Red Tail River, I mean, nice thing is you've got a river that could flow to another town or a hamlet or something along those lines there that's maybe farther down the stream. You have a road that goes right next to the river the whole way through. But what kind of food sustains the farm? That's another world building question that you can go through and say, all right, well, do I have local farmers, or do we get our food exported in from other places? So I will say that there is, we'll put a little house here. And what this is going to be a little farmer shack. And I'm just going to do like this to make it look like a field at that point there. We'll call this the 10 Pine Farm. This is where our people in the town kind of get their food and stuff from, the Tin Pine family. So, um, and I'll like to do these little like oval things, kind of make it look like a field at that point there, differentiate it from just like other buildings and stuff. So there you go, man. Maybe do some like dashes in there, make it kind of look like, you know, sprouted a gardener had seed or tilled it up at that point there. So Tin Pine Farm, and you will throw that on there. So Red Tail River. And then Tin Pine Farm. Where food comes from. And we'll just say like mainly, and this is more like just thinking about yourself. Like when you get into the world, you want to think, okay, this is my world I'm creating. So when my players are going in, what are some like easy little tidbit facts I can throw out there? We'll say mainly wheat. So they do wheat. Chickens. And say pigs. So there you go. Red Tail River flows through the town, so there's your water source. Tin Pine Farm is where the food comes from. It's mainly the wheat, chickens, and pigs. The rest is exported, is what we can say. And then we need to figure out, you know, what was the purpose of the town existing in the first place here? You know, what's special about this town? Well, thinking about it, maybe we can go through and say this town was maybe, I don't know, I had live comments or the rest of that stuff there. I try to ask some people, but you know, if it was going through, I would say maybe this town was made because it's a crossroads between two different cities at that point there. Well, since it's, or not a crossroads, but we'll say like it's a halfway point. So what we'll do, we can erase a little bit of our river, and then make it kind of thematic here. We'll draw ourselves a bridge to go over the river. Just do this little number here, makes it real easy, so it looks like, hey, the river went underneath our little road here at that point. And you can make it stone, or you can make it whatever you want it to be. I will make mine stone. But, you know, while I'm drawing this out here, just thinking about, oh, well, what is my town is a halfway point between two major cities at that point there. This is what we'll say. There's a little dot there, and this little dot. We'll say it's a halfway point from the capital and a major port. Awesome. Okay. So there we go. So now we've got the main, so you got three main features and then three main buildings at this point there. You've got your Grand Hall, which is ruled by a baron. The Territorial Raven, which is your tavern. This is the place where players can go through, rest their head, learn more information, spend some money, gamble it away, whatever they feel like doing. Grant's Goods is the general store where they can go through and say, hey, this is where we're going to get our money and the rest of that stuff there. We're going to sell items here. We're going to buy things here as well. The town, it's got the Red Tail River that flows through it there as your main water source. You've got Tin Pine Farm, which is a major food source for the place as well too. And it's leading, and this essentially is kind of like the halfway point between the capital and a port. So that again is going to help you with your world building and kind of expanding off of that. Your players don't have to go to that capital or port right away. They can stay in this town for several sessions at that point there. Most of my players usually don't leave the first town very quickly. But at this point, then you can make a little road that maybe comes off that bridge, and it's going to just go right by the river. Maybe it just goes that way. I'll have this road come off and kind of go over to the inn at that point there. There you go. This is my road for this as well too, and you know, we'll have a path that goes to Grant's Goods at that point there. Grant's Goods will also have a path that go off over to the Grand Hall. So there you go. So now you've got this kind of going. Then you want to figure out, of course, you know, here's my little arrow to kind of help out with our cardinal directions at that point there. We'll say this is north. So we got north of the town itself there. That's going to help you with north, south, east, west when you're describing this to your players. Grand Hall on the kind of the east side of the river, and then you've got kind of the rest of the village on that side of the river. So that's where you can kind of fill in. You've got the 10 Pine Farm, the rest of that here. That's when you can start kind of fleshing out your village a little bit more, and I'll kind of get into more depths about that here in a little bit. But this is the main parts that you're going to need to actually build your first village. And hopefully that kind of makes some more sense to you as far as now that I've written it out. You go through, and I mean, this is why I use note cards, is because it makes it really easy. Because now, looking at it, you know, just a few simple sketches, and as a DM, I'm pretty prepped as far as I've got the 3 main locations, possibly 4 or 5, that I'll be able to kind of describe to my players when they're looking for observations around town or places to go. And on the back, I've written down just basic things for me to know as well, too. So I know the Grand Hall is the government building. It's ruled by a baron, and that's what it says on the back. The Territorial Raven is the tavern, and it's got a modest cost, so when your players are renting a room, you can then use DM screens or your player handbook or even the basic rules to figure out, oh, what is the modest cost for a room at an inn? And you can really make it whatever you want. You can change it as well, too. If your players are very invested in this place, you can update your map as you go as well, too. But these are the main things here. And now you've got some key features which help with your world building. The Red Tail River and, you know, the 10 Pine Farm, and then also, you know, you've got the capital and the port. And then this is where I'll go through and I'll do a little arrow to say, hey, the port is south. To port. Little arrow up here to capital. And that's where you can come back through and you can kind of work on rebuilding some of the different ideas and everything that you have for your village, or maybe even thinking about some of the different ideas you have for the world as well too. But this is really all you need to get started off at that point there for making your village. I'm going to flesh some things out here, and then I'll probably do that in another video, but then show you guys how that works as well too. At least how I do it. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know. You know, maybe in the comments, or maybe send me a direct message or any of the rest of that stuff there, or hit me up on Twitter and any other social media at The Real J Ham at that point there. So thanks. See you guys later.